Welcome to Raising Happy and Thriving Gifted Kids, a daily podcast where you get relatable stories, interesting lessons, and practical tips to help your kids thrive and be happy while enjoying your own life even more. So, yesterday I talked about learning about learning. So, it clearly wasn't a lesson about skydiving. And if you shared some of your successes or failures at work, it's not about the specific successes or failures at work. It's about who you become as a learner. In my more elaborate trainings, I share a 6-part model of all the parts where learning can go either brilliant or can be a huge challenge. I talk about the meta skills, so the skills that you can apply in several areas of your life, your life attitude, the way you look at life and the way you approach life. I talk about developmental psychology, like the level of development you have, both cognitively, but in your ego development, in your self-reliance, in your motivation. Another part is knowing your own personality. What are your unique individual traits? What are you good at? What are you maybe not so good at? What are your passions? What are your challenges? Your ability to reflect on your own learning. That's something we talked about yesterday. And your well-being. People who are doing well and feeling well, they will do well. And especially positive psychology has taught a lot about how well-being adds to optimal functioning. So when you look at what we learn in life and what we learn in school, like the most depressing studies show that up to 80 or 90% of what you learn in school is forgotten altogether, especially primary and high school. So when I'm talking about gifted education, I've been looking at like what should we be teaching kids? What is important for them to learn? And at some point, I got a chance to visit a math teacher somewhere in the eastern states, and I got to interview him. And he was a bit of a maverick because he's a math teacher, and he'd sent 3 kids to meet the president because they won a competition, and that's like unheard of. So I don't think anybody else in the country would gotten 3 kids like in a couple of years. So when I sat down with him, I asked him like, "What do you do differently? How do you approach your lessons?" And the guy was a bit dramatic, so he threw like the regular math book in the trash can. But he said like, well, now learning is where it is supposed to be. And he picked out a book out of the shelves, and it was like copyright 1957 or something crazy like that. He says, now learning is where it is supposed to be, between me and the student, for me to teach, for the student to learn. And he emphasized making things harder. He said one of the problems of current methods is that they actually simplify the assignments. And because they simplify them and make smaller and smaller chunks and steps, we don't teach our kids to deal with the fact that some things are simply hard and they are supposed to be. And this is actually something I learned at Astra as well. At Astra is a school that was set up in the SpaceX rocket factory with like kids, like their IQ is off the charts. And one of the primary things that they talked about was designing harder problems. And to make, when you give kids harder problems to solve and you train them and you teach them to be able to solve those problems, they become better problem solvers. So the point of learning is not the thing that you are learning, but the learner that you are becoming and the problem solver that you are becoming. So are you clear about what your kids are learning and why? And what do you want them to learn? And what do you want them to become? The clearer you are on that, the better you're going to be able to guide them on their learning journey. If you liked this episode of Raising Happy and Thriving Kids, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast in your favorite podcast software. And if you want to dive deeply into all the things you can do to help your kids thrive, be happier while making your own life more enjoyable, go to smartparentingsecrets.com, where you can get free additional training. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and as always, bring out the best in yourself and each other.